scene is something I don't really connect with at all. I'm going to take a bunch of, we can talk about anything you want to talk about, the other books, this book, whatever you want to talk about, but I do want to get some questions in before I have to sit down and sign here.
Okay.
Yes?
Okay, last time you were here,
Yeah.
the president for an election. So
Yes.
what's your opinion about the primary and the election?
The election. You got right to the ugly part. You know, I mean, it's pretty amazing, the whole process, starting with the gubernatorial race, only in Florida would you have a guy who headed this healthcare company that had the biggest medical fraud in the history of medicare. I mean, in most places, most places, if you moved in, you'd change your name, and at least wear a disguise. You wouldn't say, you know what, I'm bored, I think I'll run for governor. And they say, when they tell you you can't buy an election, that's not true, you can't buy an election. Now, the other guy who was a big favorite of mine, not a favorite candidate, but just as a character, this guy, Jeff Green, who was running in the Democratic primary, and he's got the yacht. And he's got Lindsay's on the yacht. And either Mike Tyson was the best man at his wedding, or he was the best man anyway. And he's only lived here 2 years, right? He's got oodles and oodles of money. And he decides, and he looks around, and the only office that he can run for, because he's only been here 2 years, is of course the unimportant office of U.S. Senator. He hasn't been here long enough to run for governor or representative, but he can even run for U.S. Senator. So anyway, the guy, I was at a book signing, Denver somewhere, and someone says, I don't know much about Florida politics, but I was reading up on your candidates. He said, I've never read a political story before where I read the phrase, vomit-caked yacht. I said, that's Florida. That's Jeff Green's vote. And he spent most of the primaries, explaining various things that had happened on his vote, which he either wasn't there or wasn't aware of or wasn't on board or something. Anyway, it sounds like he's got a great life and he'll do fine now that he's been defeated. But this is Florida for you. And then you got Charlie Crist, who's just, I wrote this in a column that he's going to be very hard to beat if one of these hurricanes hits this year. His rating went right up after the oil spill because he was everywhere. He counted every tar ball in the canyon. Every time I turned on TV, there was Charlie counting tar balls. So, and I think if there's a hurricane, he's going to take a page out of Jeff's book. Jeff never went anywhere there was a hurricane. He was always wherever the hurricane was coming, and he was always there. Charlie's not that. He'll pick up on that. And if one of these storms hit, he will be on every TV station, and he'll be on the networks. He'll be on Larry King. You will have to use a crowbar to get him out in front of the camera. And he's a sitting governor, and a governor can get a lot of news if they want to. Now I think Rubio's going to have some difficulty. If, on the other hand, we sort of escape without a hurricane, who wants one of those, then I think it's going to be very tough for Charlie to win. But it's just the whole cast of characters. In Dade County, it's just the usual where you could just throw a mullet net, and you're going to really just throw a net over them, and you're going to get a felon or two, and they're down there, they're running for office. It's all a happy picture. Somebody on this side, yeah, hi.
Yeah, as you're talking, sometimes you talk like you're the author, and other times you talk about these people like you just met them.
Yeah.
Is there a point
where
the
the
character
characters
becomes real enough to you?
Yeah, part of the great fun of these novels is being surprised by your characters. I love to hear these writers say that, well, I have the outline so carefully plotted that I know the last sentence before I start the book. Why in the world would you write the book if you knew the last sentence? It's got to be fun for me. The characters have to surprise me. I don't use an outline. It's like a handcuff. And so I do have in my head when I start a little cast in my mind of characters and sort of a premise. I knew I wanted this paparazzo in here. I didn't know much about him. I knew he was loathsome, but that goes without saying. It was just a question of how I developed this into an interesting character that you still want to learn about. And even as loathsome as he is, who still has a couple of good moments in the book. So that's part of it, is the fun for me. And you live with it. It takes anywhere from 14 to 18 months to write one of the grown-up novels. And So you're living with, they become part of your family for better or for worse. You're living with them. You have to, it really becomes, they become real to you in that way. I don't know that I would, I mean, you have affection for something, but occasionally they disappoint you. They do. I mean, I've had books where I had great expectations for certain characters, and I ended up having to get rid of them. They were boring me, or they just weren't performing, and that's it. I mean, you make the decision, and you're out of there. And this novel, Star Island, there was a character, and it was just in there for a couple of chapters, but I liked it. And my editor read the manuscript and said, I don't know that he fits. He said, you're going to have to write a lot more about it. Tell me more about it. So I wrote a lot more, and I sent him the next draft. And he said, I just don't think this is the book for this guy. And he was absolutely right. So I had to go back and take that character out, which is not as easy as it sounds, because they leave footprints everywhere. Every plot point that the character is involved in, you have to fix it and assign it to another character. So it's a bit of surgery to do it, but he was absolutely right. Now, I didn't throw the character away. He's going to be, matter of fact, I like him so he's going to be in this book I'm working on now, this novel for kids, and he'll be fine in that book. But in that case, my editor was right. But that's a case where you had high hopes and it just didn't work out. So yeah, I mean, they become real to you, and if they don't, I don't think they're very convincing. Somebody had their.
Are you Governor Hiaasen?
Am I Skink? No. I mean, I wish. Skink he says a few things that I probably said even in the newspaper, and he gets away with things that I certainly wish I could get away with. Okay. Massive message. I mean, there in every novelist is responsible for every one of the characters, and they have to come. This is the scary part. They have to come from somewhere in you, even the bad ones, even the rotten ones do. So you can't disavow any of them. But in every novel, there is a character who probably says or does a few things that I have said or done, or wished I had. But I don't go into it with that in mind. There's most of the humor in my novels is in the narrative voice of the novel itself, not specifically assigned to one character or another. So I've got time for one more question. Is there any young kids that want to ask a question? Oh, okay. I'm going to do two then. I'm going to violate the rule. I'll get to it in a minute. Let me get in. Yeah. Why did I choose to write books? It was because it's a socially acceptable outlet for some of the things that are going on in my head. To be seriously, when I was your age, I loved to read. I just loved to read, and it was the coolest thing to pick up a book and not want to stop turning the pages, to get so involved in it, so involved in the characters. And so from a very young age, I would write little short stories or journals or things, and I just always liked putting sentences together, and I would show them to my friends and hope for the same reaction that they would find it interesting. It was a very rewarding thing, and it's just great fun also to make people laugh, to entertain them. Even after all these years, it's a gas, to sit in an airport and watch somebody reading one of my novels. If they're laughing, if they're not laughing, it's painful. It's extremely, it's fun. Thanks. No, sorry. One more. When is it coming out, the next kid's book? I'm hoping to finish it by the end of this year, which means it will be out at some point in 2011. I'm hoping. This book tour is going on and on, so I haven't been doing much writing, but my goal is to have it come out at some point next year. But we'll see. I hope I can do that. Listen, you all have been great, and I don't know where I'm going to see you, but I see you somewhere.